I have a question for you guys. When we're in a deep state of loneliness and we fall in love, do we fall in love with the person or do we fall in love with the feeling of being seen? Because this was a question that just kept coming back to me as I was reading White Nights. By the way, a massive thank you to the people who recommended me this book. May all your wishes come true. It was a deeply captivating book. I know the story was short, it's about 70 pages, but Dostoevsky really does paint he literally paints, pun intended, he literally paints the human soul in a way that you can appreciate it in its most vulnerable state, hopeful for being loved, but at the same time very open to being hurt and heartbroken. So the story follows Nastenka and also the dreamer, whose name we don't know. Maybe that's meant to mirror his emotional invisibility. Maybe it's a way for us to be able to see a reflection of ourselves, particularly those of us who experience loneliness or a deep sense of longing for love. Maybe it's a way for us to be able to connect with him. But irrespective of that, it follows the journey of their story. Some might argue it's a love story. I would say, I don't know if I would actually call it a love story, because I don't doubt that the main character loves Nastenka. But we can't forget the fact that he's very much been ignored for most of his life. And she's the very first person who acknowledges him. So the oxytocin and the dopamine surge that he gets from finally being recognized could just be a biological response, couldn't it? In a similar way, Nastenka being in love with the lodger, I don't doubt that. But then again, she's someone who's been safety pin to her grandmother's dress and who's been deprived of her own sense of freedom. And the lodger symbolizes freedom. And we know that the brain rewards freedom. So in a sense, you could argue from a psychological standpoint that it's misattribution of arousal, that their physical needs have somehow been rewired into romantic attraction. Because loneliness primes the brain to seek connection, because connection means safety. It means that you are at an advantage when it comes to self-preservation. It's kind of how we're hardwired for our survival. And it's true, a moment of happiness could last your lifetime, because it all boils down to the emotional neural network. I'm going to say it's the amygdala, the hippocampus, the ventral striatum. The way in which they encode a moment depends on how deeply it's impacted you, and it's not dependent on the duration. So even though his love for Nastenka, or the moment that he was with her, was probably, I think, 3 or 4 nights, it's likely that it will stay with him for a lifetime because it has deeply impacted him. I don't know, I think it's very hard to tell when you're in a state of loneliness and you fall in love. I think it's very difficult to decipher whether you've fallen in love with the person or with the feeling that you're now getting from finally being acknowledged. Because for me, when I look at the main character, I know had it been any other person who had acknowledged him on that night, he would have felt the exact same way. And I guess you could say the same for Nastenka. But I could be wrong. But all in all, I know with White Nights, it reinforces the idea that heartbreak, hope, love, loneliness, all of this is kind of all intertwined. And at the end of the day, as a human being, we all have this deep desire to be seen before the night ends.